honestly, when you think about it, it's fucking diabolical that they had this plan and they planned this for months, weeks, and months ahead of time, and they waited till she had that baby. And that's fucking sick. I mean, the whole thing's sick, but something about that is just really fucking sick. I think that this is one of the craziest stories that I've ever heard in my life, and it's one that I feel like did not get near enough attention. 10 years ago, one of the worst murders in Ohio history happened right down the road from me, and it's a case that not a lot of people know about, and I unfortunately am just kind of an armchair expert about this situation. I made a PowerPoint! As you can see, our story takes place in a little town called Piketon, Ohio. I did live there at the time. This happened on April 22nd of 2016. If this is a case that you're not super familiar with and you just kind of want like a brief little synopsis of it, I do have a video a little ways back that I can pin if you would like. This is more explaining the case and the timeline and where we're at now for everybody who has lost track of this case. Somewhere overnight between April 21st and 22nd of 2016, 8 members of the Rhoden family were murdered in their homes. Most of them were in bed, however, a couple of them did fight back. Now, because this family tree gets a little confusing, we're going to go through who's who and some relations here. I need a pointer. I mean, it's a cat toy, but it'll do. If we're going to educate, we're going to educate, bitch. First of all, we have the patriarch of the family. This would be Chris Rhoden Sr. We have his ex-wife, Dana Rhoden. Together, they have 3 children. They have Frankie is 20 years old. Frankie, as you can see, does have a partner here. He is engaged to Hannah Hazel Gilly. Frankie has 1 son from a previous relationship, and him and Hannah have a 6-month-old son together. We have Hannah Mae Rhoden, who is the central cog of this entire story, as you will see. We have her little brother, Chris Jr., who was 16 years old, also murdered that night. We have 2 cousins of Chris Rhoden Sr. We have Gary Rhoden from Greenup, Kentucky, and we have Kenneth Rhoden from Left Fork Road. Now, we have some other people to talk about in this situation, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you they did it. So here we go. Starting with the father, we have George Billy Wagner. That is not his biological name. I forget what it is. He changed his name to George Washington Wagner, which I think is fucking hilarious, but still goes by Billy. So whatever. His trial is about to come up, and we're all going to see that he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Billy is married to a woman named Angela Wagner. Together, they have 2 spawns of Satan named George Wagner IV and Jake Wagner. There's a couple of other Wagner family members that are going to be a little bit relevant here. We have Frederica Wagner. She is the mother of Billy Wagner, grandmother of George and Jake. She is also one of the biggest landowners in Pike County, Ohio. She has like a mini horse farm or something, but there's also like a nursing home with like questionable billing and like a church. There's also like a homeless shelter and shit. It's all very above board and definitely not sketchy. And then we have Rita Newcomb. Rita Newcomb is the mother of Angela Wagner and also the grandmother of George and Jake. Here we have the Wagner family outside of their prison outfits. We have Billy, Angela, George is back here. This is Jake. That is baby Sophia. And that is George and his ex-wife's son. George and his ex-wife, this is their wedding. She testified against him in his trial. And I, to this day, remain so impressed by her bravery and strength to do this in front of him and to stare him in the face and tell him what a monster he was. Tabby, it's been 4 years and I'm still so proud of you. If you look at this picture, you can see that this wasn't just a relationship between Hannah and Jake. The entire family had relationships with one another. These are what you would consider family friends, associates, locals from the area that run in same circles, things like that. We have Jake, Billy, Angela. This back here is Hannah Mae, Chris Sr., we have Chris Jr., Frankie, George, and George's ex-wife, Tabby. This is at their wedding. Okay, so here's a little bit better of a layout if you need a little more clarification on this one, because like I said, it's a little confusing. So we've covered the basic core family, and we've covered the basic core family of the Wagners. Over here, as a reminder, we have Dana and her ex-husband, Chris, their 3 children, Frankie's fiance, Hannah, Christopher's brother, Kenneth, and his cousin, Gary. Here are our victims. Here are our perpetrators. On April 22nd, 2016, around 7 in the morning, 2 cousins of Dana named Bobby Joe and James Manley showed up at Chris Sr.'s house to feed his dogs, as apparently they often did. You can see here there is a single wide trailer with a porch, a big long sidewalk, we have garages, and please note the enormous pole barn out here that we're later going to find out is a marijuana grow operation. You can also see several little chicken homes and things like that we're going to find out are fighting chicken. The trailer is locked, but Bobby Joe has a key, so Bobby Joe lets herself in and finds the badly beaten and bloodied bodies of her cousin-in-law, Chris Sr., and his cousin, Gary Rhoden. After calling 911, Bobby Joe goes next door to Frankie's home, which is next door to Chris Sr.'s house. Bobby goes, knocks on the door. The door is answered by Frankie's 3-year-old son, covered in his parents' blood. After removing at least that child, and I do believe that somebody would have had to go back into the bedroom because the 6-month-old baby was laying in bed between their parents. So honestly, I'm not real sure exactly when the 6-month-old was removed off the top of my head. The babies in this situation are unharmed, by the way. If I forget to say that, there's several babies involved in this. They're all fine. Physically, anyway. Bobby comes out and tells her brother what she has found inside of Frankie's home, realizing that this is not a coincidence, that something very bad has happened to this family, as there are currently 4 dead bodies between 2 houses, including babies covered in their parents' blood. After this, James Manley, the brother of Bobby Joe, he goes to Dana's home, which is further up Union Hill Road. It's about a mile up the road. There was some sort of law enforcement that was there as well. This is Dana's new home that Chris had just bought her, and she was very, very proud of it. When James gets to this house, he finds the bodies of Dana, Chris Jr., and Hannah Mae Rhoden. There was a heavy law enforcement presence because obviously this is a huge case. There were 7 dead bodies. There was originally some confusion about where Chris Jr.'s body was, and they thought perhaps for a second that maybe he was involved or had gotten away. However, they did unfortunately find his body in his room in Dana's home. Now, later that afternoon at some point, a cousin of brothers Chris Sr. and Kenneth Rhoden decided to go over and check on his cousin Kenneth after he could not get a hold of him after hearing the news about Chris and his family. This is on Left Fork Road. It is also in Piketon, but it's about 8 miles away from the original site. When he goes into Kenneth's camper, he does find Kenneth's body shot once through the eye, and there is money spread all over it to look like a deal gone bad. So how did we get here? Let's go over a brief timeline. In the summer of 2010 at the Pike County Fair, Jake Wagner meets Hannah Mae Rhoden while she's showing rabbits. You can see the ages on here. This was not the most age-appropriate relationship in the world, but here we are. A short 3 years later, Hannah becomes a mother at the age of 16 and gives birth to baby Sophia, her daughter with Jake Wagner. Everything seems to be going somewhat okay with them at first, but then, as things do, it soured. In February of 2015, about 18 months after baby Sophia is born, Jake and Hannah Mae break up. It's up for debate whether there was a little back and forth on this or whether they stayed broken up, but we all know how that goes, so let's be real. Angela Wagner is real fucking pissed that when Hannah Mae leaves their home where she was living with her boyfriend while she is underage, she took baby Sophia with her. Later that year, the Wagners start a bitter, bitter custody battle with Hannah Mae over custody of baby Sophia. This gets really, really ugly, and at one point shortly before her death, Hannah says that they will have to take Sophia over my dead body. So apparently they took that seriously. At some point in 2015, Hannah meets a new boy. His name is Charlie Gilly. Charlie is the brother of Hannah Hazel Gilly, the fiance of Hannah's brother, because sure. At some point during the summer of 2015, Hannah would have found out that she was in fact pregnant again. At least at this point, I do believe she's 18 years old. So we're making progress. After Jake learns that Hannah is pregnant and Hannah and Charlie's relationship is a little bit on again, off again, Charlie has his own issues. He's, going through some stuff. During this tumultuous period between Hannah Mae Rhoden and Charlie Gilly, Jake is trying to weasel his way back in. Come to find out, he's weaseling his way back in not only because he wants control of this situation, because his mother wants control of this situation, but we'll get there. Jake keeps trying to reconcile with Hannah. Hannah says, no, I don't want to be with you. Jake comes over and assembles the crib for this baby. And honestly, if I'm being perfectly honest about it, it seems a little mixed signally to me, but I wasn't there. Somewhere around April 18th of 2016, Hannah Mae Rhoden gives birth to baby Kylie. This picture is a picture of a picture that was on Hannah's phone. Hannah never even got to post this picture of baby Sophia meeting her baby sister. It's so sweet. Timeline of April 22nd, 2016. At some point in the middle of the night, April 21st to 22nd, the Wagners carry out this massacre. We'll get to the details of the massacre here in a minute. At 9:49 a.m., the first 911 call and 2 victims are found. The second location and 2 more victims are found. These are Chris Sr. and Frankie's trailers next door to each other containing 4 victims. Shortly after, police and family members, this is Charles Manley, they go and they find the third location and 3 more victims. Police, SWAT, BCI descend. They have shut down the entire area. 32 is the highway they're standing in to take this picture going up Union Hill Road. You couldn't have wedged another car on that road. I have never seen anything like it. They had all of the back roads closed. It was wild shit. At this point, the Pike County Sheriff's Office realizes that they're in over their heads, so they call an Ohio BCI, and we get our first notice issued by Sheriff Charlie Reeder telling the public that everybody should stay indoors, lock their doors, and stay safe. At 1:26 p.m., we have the second 911 call where they found Kenneth Rhoden. Later this afternoon, we finally have a press conference with Sheriff Charlie Reeder, who goes on television and gives updates about the situation and tells the community, we don't know who this is, we don't know where they are, arm yourselves, defend yourself by any means necessary. And that is a fucking wild sentence to hear as a resident living down the road from this situation. In the days following, there were press conferences that came out, and this is when the national news lost a lot of interest in this case, because it starts coming out that there are marijuana grow operations, it starts coming out that there are fighting chickens, that there are these derby cars, all this other shit. So the local area is left absolutely fucking stunned by this. There are no suspects. For over a year, they are begging the public for tips and for any information. And basically the community is divided on what they think the motive behind this was. There's of course the inside job theories where this family would be considered white trash by most those around them. They say that like it's a bad thing. Like, I'm white trash too. Like we discussed, there was a ton of family drama going on. And, you know, when you get into those types of situations, a lot of people get hot-headed about it. They make crimes of passion, that sort of thing. So that was definitely a possibility. A few weeks prior, Chris Rhoden Jr., the 16-year-old or 15-year-old, had been in a road rage incident with a pregnant woman in Piketon as well. And as you can imagine, her husband was not very happy about it. Frankie Rhoden apparently ran in local demolition derbies and things like that. Apparently there was some drama going on with that situation, talking about how Frankie had really expensive derby cars and things like that, that somebody might want to kill him for these valuable things, which if you're killing somebody over a demolition derby car, that's a choice. The Rhodens did in fact raise and participate in fighting chickens. I honestly didn't know we were still fighting chickens until this case came up. I didn't realize this was still a thing. Most likely incident out of all of the inside job category would be the relationship drama between Jake Wagner, Hannah Rhoden over their daughter Sophia. On the other hand, we have what seemed like a little bit more of a far-fetched theory, but the people that were diehard people thinking that the cartel did this murder will die on that hill to this day. A lot of people in the community believe that these were hits carried out either by the cartel or by other high-ranking drug people in Columbus or Detroit or bigger cities where the drugs come in from. Well, technically, everything that I'm about to say over in this category is in fact an allegation because he's not here to defend himself. This seems to be kind of common knowledge that this information is true, or at least pretty close to it. Chris Jr. and his friends, known dealers, runners, sellers, things of that nature. They did in fact have a grow operation going on the property. Leading up to the murders, there was a quote big deal out west that kept coming up between Chris and Billy Wagner. This was apparently some deal that was supposed to be Billy and Chris only driving out west to make all this crazy money off of drugs. Apparently Billy was being fucking weird about it because Chris was getting weirded out by it and thought something's not right here. So as they're heading to go out west, they make it to about Cincinnati. So not even very far, about an hour and a half down the road, and Chris bails and has somebody come get him because he knows if he goes out west with Billy, he's not coming back. I've heard a lot of stories from people that would have been friends with these people at the same time and ran in these circles that Chris was looking at going legitimate for his marijuana operation. In 2016, Ohio was considering passing the recreational marijuana law. It actually didn't pass this year when they ran it, but it did pass the year after that. If you remember, look it up. There was a whole thing with like Nick Lachey trying to be involved with this. Like it's something insane. Is recreational in Ohio now, but Chris was allegedly going to go legitimate. He was trying to get in on the ground floor of recreational marijuana in the state of Ohio. This was pissing off these associates that he had been running around with for a long time, doing, things that probably weren't on the up and up. The style of the murders was a big tip-off to everybody about the potential of it being the cartel or a drug hit. All but two were shot execution style in the head in their beds. There were a couple of victims that had injuries to their torsos and arms, one of which being Chris Sr., and the other one was Gary Rhoden. And we come to find out that Chris and Gary were actually awake when their attack started. They were not asleep in their beds. They were actually in the living room of Chris's trailer when the attack started. Basically, everything else was just too fucking far-fetched to believe. The idea that somebody would kill 8 people over custody of a child that would be losing 8 members of their family in the process, the idea that somebody would kill somebody over a road rage incident, over a derby car, over drug, marijuana debt, while not completely impossible, are not likely. So honestly, out of all of the theories that were going around at the time, this was one of the more believable ones at the beginning. For 2 years after, nothing happened. So for 2 years, there was not a whole lot of movement to the public anyway in this case. However, Ohio BCI did, of course, have some theories. They were interviewing lots of people. And like I said, this family had a lot going on, and like only about half of it was on the up and up. So there was a lot of angles that had to be investigated. One of the main angles that was zeroed in on from the very beginning was the custody angle between Jake and Hannah Rhoden over their baby Sophia. Wagners have been questioned multiple times. They've been visited by cops. They've actually even had their property and their farm searched after they sold it to somebody else to get rid of this farm that was on Peterson Road. When you get into the details of the case, that's actually pretty relevant, but just for the general summary, it's not. It's just sketchy. They were selling all their shit. They're getting rid of everything and they're moving. Where did they move? Alaska. They decided to go to fucking Alaska. They, of course, are driving up there because, they're moving. So they're taking trailers, horse trailers, full of their stuff. They are stopped at the Canadian border in Montana, and they are questioned about this murder, about the move, about things, because they have been not super truthful with authorities when questioned about things. Some of their answers don't line up. There's an infamous interview with Billy Wagner that took like an entire day to listen to during trial, and I think he talks more than me, and that is saying something. They continue on with their move. They move into a trailer in Kenai, Alaska, trying to make a go of it up there. The boys do have their CDLA, so they are trying to drive a truck. I don't know what these two morons are doing, other than sitting at home being paranoid and accusing their daughters-in-law of harming children, unfoundedly. Surprise! On March 24th, 2018, Jake marries a woman. Her name is Beth Ann Armour. Now, Beth Ann here, my girl's been through some shit. She'd been through a lot of shit before she met Jake Wagner, and then she truly went through hell with him. And I mean, you can see on this timeline here, they weren't together very long before she fled with the help of a friend in the middle of the night after being accused of harming baby Sophia by Jake's mother, Angela. Now, that's going to be a pattern that you're going to notice. At some point after Jake and Beth Ann get married in Alaska, they do return to Ohio, and they do bring Beth Ann with her. They return to Angela's hometown, which is South Webster, Ohio. Questioned again at the border. Honestly, I'm not sure if it was this time or if it was on the way up that the vehicle was bugged, but at some point, BCI investigators did bug their vehicle and did not get anything from it. They knew that the vehicle had been bugged, so they did not talk about anything other than saying, guys, we're not talking about anything. This vehicle's bugged. Questioned at the border again. They did give super fucking sketchy answers, and I don't know why they left these interviews thinking that they were like scot-free and that everything was going to be fine, because it absolutely was not. And they absolutely knew that the Wagners had done this at this point. They were just trying to get the evidence to prove it. After 3 months with Jake Wagner, Beth Ann leaves South Webster. She managed to get out and escape with her life, not nearly as narrowly as George's ex-wife Tabitha did, but she did in fact escape, and she was safe, and she did come to the trial, and she stared at George in the face and testified against him. After returning back to Ohio, law enforcement is kind of openly following the Wagners at this point. The boys are driving for R&L carriers. They have their trucks bugged. They have their phones bugged. They have all of these things going on, and law enforcement is watching them, and they know it. So they are at each other's throat. They are fighting. They are starting to turn on each other, and they are imploding. And then finally, on November 13th of 2018, we have 6 arrests in the Rhoden murders. We have Billy Wagner, Angela Wagner, George Wagner, Jake Wagner. They also arrest Billy's mother, Frederica, for assisting in them getting ready for the crime, and then afterwards there's some purchases and shit. Also arrested was Rita Newcomb. This is Angela's mother. Rita was arrested for forging custody documents that were allegedly signed by Hannah only a few days before baby Kylie was born, therefore only a few days before Hannah was murdered, giving complete custody of baby Sophia to Jake and his mother should anything ever happen to her and she is ever killed. Which conveniently she was about less than a week later. That's not suspicious at all. We've gone over a whole bunch of details and none of this shit makes any sense. So what actually happened? To make a long story even longer, here's what happened. We don't know exactly how the plan started. Angela Wagner, Billy Wagner, and their boys deciding that Hannah Rhoden had to go. Then it became, well, if we kill Hannah, we have to kill her dad because her dad will come after us. If we kill her dad, we have to kill her brother. If we kill her brother, we're going to have to kill the uncle, Kenneth, because he will also come after us. Basically, everybody else was collateral damage. In the weeks heading up to them, they had decided to commit them once baby Kylie was born, and they started preparing. They did trial runs. We have Walmart footage of Angela going to the local Waverly Walmart and buying these grandpa-looking shoes in the wrong sizes along with diarrhea medicine. Jake and George both dyed their hair jet black, like Boondock Saints, which apparently was their favorite movie. And allegedly, they watched a scene from this movie to hype themselves up to commit this murder. We also have the forged custody documents that I told you about that Rita Newcomb had done. They ordered and made homemade silencers. There were some online purchases made by Frederica Wagner, as well as the boys, for cell phone signal jammers, for bulletproof vests, for things like that, that were 100% not being bought for self-protection. The attempt on Chris already with the quote big deal out west. And then we have the paternity of Kylie, because what I didn't mention is, even though Hannah knew that baby Kylie was in fact the daughter of Charlie Gilly, Jake Wagner refused to accept that. He wanted to believe that he was the father of baby Kylie so that he could also have custody of her, because he wanted Sophia's sister. Even if Kylie was not his biological child, he still was making a case for the custody of this child. Now, during the actual murders themselves, there was a few interesting things that happened. The murders were actually committed by Billy Wagner, George, and Jake Wagner. Angela Wagner was at home with 3-year-old baby Sophia, but she was very much aware of what was going on, make no mistake. If anything, Angela was more involved in this with anybody, and if I were a betting woman, and sometimes I am, I would bet that Angela is the one who came up with the idea that she had to die. Billy, being friends with Chris, knew that they could not sneak into his home because of the grow operation and the chickens and everything, that he would not be able to get in because of his dogs, things like that. So they knew they would have to come over while Chris was awake and while Chris knew that they were there. What was supposed to happen is that Chris was supposed to come out on the porch and George was supposed to shoot him from the driveway using the truck as cover. But unfortunately, George was too chicken shit to fire the gun. The first shots were fired from outside. However, the majority of the violence in this situation happened inside the trailer, because when Billy went into this trailer before the shooting happened as kind of the ruse for why we're here, they realized that Gary Rhoden was there visiting Chris, and they didn't know he was there. So now, instead of there only being one person, now they have to pivot because there's two. And you can't let the other one get away once you start shooting the first one. There were bodies, and this was a super bloody crime scene, and this is not at all how this scene was supposed to go. The bodies were removed, and that left bloody footprints of these papaw shoes in blood. Also a few handprints in here, but honestly, like, there were so many people in and out of these houses that even if they had been good prints, I don't think they would have come up. Now, the part that makes everybody sick about this entire situation is that with both Hannah Mae Rhoden and Hannah Hazel Gilly's bodies, they both were laying in bed with their babies. Hannah Mae's daughter Kylie being just freshly 4 days old, and Hannah Hazel's son being 6 months old. Both of these mothers were nursing mothers. So Jake Wagner testified that he positioned the babies to nurse their dead mothers so that the babies would not die. Yeah, he's just such a thoughtful man, you know. Kenneth's murder was in fact staged to look like a drug deal gone bad. He was shot once through the eye, and there were dollar bills scattered all over his body. All the victims have at least one shot to the head, and only one victim, which is Kenneth, is the only one that was shot one time. These were brutal crime scenes. I've seen a couple of them, and it's fucking bad. I can't even imagine walking into that. After the murders, what did the Wagners do? They went to the fucking funerals. They attended the fucking funerals of the people they murdered. All of them. Is that not fucking insane? Is that not the most fucking insane thing? And there's a picture, I'll put it over the screen right here, of these dumb fucks going over to the funeral home. This is for Gary's funeral in Greenup, Kentucky. You can see the black hair dye still. Like, their hair's not that color. Jake does not have black hair. He doesn't. So for everybody who was arguing with me in the comments 4 years ago, telling me that they didn't dye their hair black, yes, they did. Testified to it. After the murder, of course, we do have the attempted destruction of the murder weapons and evidence. They did try to dismantle the guns. They put them in buckets, filled them with Quikrete, and sunk them under a goose house in a pond. And in doing so, they basically preserved the weapons perfectly so that once they confessed where they were able to pull them and retrieve all the evidence that they needed. They did establish legal paternity of Kylie. Kylie's father, by a DNA test, is in fact Charlie Gilly. The Wagners sold property, houses, items, trailers, cars, stuff, and they loaded all their shit up and left. Because nothing says I have nothing to hide more than moving to fucking Alaska. And the main question everybody has is, why the fuck did they do this? Literally, why did they do this? And there were basically 3 different options for why they did this. And honestly, parts of all 3 of these play into it. Of course, we have the control aspect, which is that Angela wanted control of her boys and her grandchildren. And I mean, I could talk about Angela's enmeshment issues all day long, but the emotional incest going on in this family was absolutely fucking insane. Angela was jealous of her son's partners, even going so far as to tell Tabby that marital relations were for making babies only and not for fun, and that anything involving body parts other than the main one intended for that were a sin and you would go to hell for it. So maybe that explains why these boys were always in such a fucking bad mood. One thing that Angela hated, and it ate her alive, is the fact that Hannah Mae Rhoden would not comply with Angela's threats, her orders, anything like that. And when Hannah Mae left, she left with Sophia. Angela had successfully run off George's ex-wife, Tabby, and when Tabby left, Tabby was lucky to leave with her life and was not able to take her son. And in doing so, she was also manipulated and threatened into signing over her custody rights to her own son to the Wagners. Fortunately, all these motherfuckers being in prison null and voided that, so Tabby does in fact have her son back, and I am so happy for you. Then, of course, we have the drug angle. Billy and Chris's dealings were going sour. They had been arguing, they had been fighting, you know, the quote unquote big deal out west that Chris had bailed on. Billy owed Chris money. Chris was going legitimate. And honestly, they were just fucking pissed off at each other. Like, this friendship was not long for this world. And Billy saw an easy way out. And then, of course, we have what is possibly the strangest motive that I've ever heard for annihilating an entire family, including 8 members of one family, including 2 mothers laying in bed next to their babies that were nursing on their dead bodies, was Angela's past sexual trauma, because she was raped as a teenager and never recovered. So she decided to enmesh herself with her sons and by proxy her grandchildren. And because of this, Angela thought that anybody who came around that was not her, her husband, or her children was going to do the same thing to these children that was done to her, which is really sad if you're not a fucking murderer. Almost done, guys, I promise. All 4 members of this family were in fact arrested, plus 2 bonus members. They were arrested in 2018, 3 years after their arrest on the 5th anniversary of the crime, 5 years ago today. Jake Wagner confessed to the crime. And honestly, I was shocked. I figured if anybody was going to roll over, it was going to be George, because he didn't really have any, like, skin in this. But it was Jake. Jake confessed to everything. Everything that I just told you, he said was true, basically. And that they had done this. He tried to say that he had shot all 8 people. In the state of Ohio, it doesn't matter if you pull the trigger or not. Basically, it wouldn't matter if he said he shot everybody. He basically just said that for clout in prison. As a part of his plea deal, he did receive life, and he will be eligible for parole after 32 years. And he did have to testify against any other family members that would come up for trial. He got lucky, and he did not, in fact, have to testify against his mother, because shortly after that, Angela took a plea deal too. Angela took a plea deal for conspiracy to commit murder and was sentenced to 30 years in prison, which is bullshit. Now, George decided not to take a plea deal. He took his shit to trial. Because he took his shit to trial, that's why we know so many details about this case. During his trial, which lasted a little over a month, and I did cover it in insane detail every single day. These are some of the earliest TikTok videos I ever made, and they are so painful to watch. George's mother and brother did in fact testify against him, and I believe they called him Billy. I can't remember if Billy testified or we just had to listen to his like 6-hour long interview in the Kroger parking lot, but it felt like he was there. George was, of course, convicted. It didn't take very long. He did receive 8 consecutive life sentences plus 121 years for tampering with evidence and other charges that were included in this. He is appealing his sentence, saying ineffective assistance of counsel, which is honestly not true because he actually had a really good defense attorney in Rick Nash. We are still waiting on Billy Wagner's trial. He has, of course, pled not guilty to this crime, and we should be coming up on this trial really soon. We should have already had it, honestly, but there's been some judge changes. The current judge that's in with this case hates the prosecutor. So it's a whole fucking thing, and they're moving it to a new county. We, of course, have our 2 auxiliary charges here. We have Frederica Wagner, the mother of Billy Wagner. Her case was dismissed. Her charges were dismissed without prejudice. And then Rita Newcomb, which is Angela's mother, she pled guilty to obstructing official business for the forgery of these custody documents, and she received 5 years probation, which she has now completed. Chris and Dana Rhoden are buried in a gorgeous spot in this beautiful cemetery. They are buried together with their 3 children in a family grave. Kenneth Rhoden is buried in Piketon, also a beautiful headstone. It's kind of a blurry picture, but they do have him riding his motorcycle on the front of it. Gary Rhoden, who is buried in Greenup, Kentucky, and of course we have Hannah Hazel Gilley, who is also buried locally. And if I'm being perfectly honest, it actually kind of makes me like low-key kind of sad that Hannah and Frankie were not buried together. I just feel like they maybe should have been together. But I do think it's beautiful that Frankie is with his brother, his sister, and his parents as well. It's just kind of a shitty situation. There's not really a good answer to it. That is it. That is the 10th anniversary of the Rhoden family massacre, the Piketon murders, the Piketon massacre, the murder of 8 members of the Rhoden family by the Wagner family over bullshit accusations and paranoia and control, and to a smaller extent, money and control over drugs. This is one of the most senseless crimes that I can think of that has had such a fucking ripple effect on the community around it. Everybody around here knows this story. Everybody around here was shaken to their absolute core when this happened. Not to bean soup it or anything, like, and be like, oh, well, my experience is worse than the family's. Clearly, it fucking wasn't. So, with it being 10 years since their senseless and tragic murders, I felt like it was necessary to tell their story again, and make sure that their family knows that we have not forgotten them, that justice will be served finally for all 8 of them, and they can rest in peace. I've not made a slideshow since high school, so I did my best. Also, don't be judging if this video is like low-key kind of shitty, because like I've never filmed a video like this before, so give me a fucking break, would you? Let me know what you want to see more of, and I will see you all in the next one. Love you. Bye.